Welcome back to Animal Uncovered. She's waited her entire life for this moment. Deep beneath the earth, in chambers carved from solid clay, she has felt the tremors above, the first warm rains of spring, the vibrations of awakening life. Now, driven by an ancient chemical urgency, she pushes through tons of soil toward a world she has never seen. She is a virgin queen, and today she will take her first and last flight into the sky. Around her, thousands of her sisters emerge from colonies scattered across the landscape. The air fills with wings, gossamer thin, catching the light like scattered diamonds. But this is no celebration. This is war. The aerial battlefield where only the strongest, fastest, and most cunning will survive to build the next generation of empires. She launches herself upward, her four wings beating in perfect synchronization. Below her, the earth recedes. Above her, the sky teems with suitors, thousands of males, each one programmed for a single purpose, to mate and then to die. The collision is violent, primal, mid-air, suspended between earth and sky. She accepts his genetic gift. But there is no tenderness here, no pause for ceremony. The moment their bodies separate, he tumbles earthward, his purpose fulfilled, his life ending as it began, in service to the colony. She lands hard, her delicate wings now a liability. With mechanical precision, she grasps each wing between her mandibles and tears them from her body. The pain is irrelevant. She will never fly again. She will never see sunlight again. She will spend the rest of her life, perhaps 30 years, buried alive in darkness, laying eggs by the millions. But first, she must dig. Part 1. The superorganism awakens. What you have just heard is not merely the mating of two insects. It is the birth for civilization, the founding moment of what biologists call a superorganism, a single living entity composed of millions of individual bodies, each one expendable, each one serving a purpose greater than itself. We think of ants as insects, but this is a profound misunderstanding. An ant colony is not a collection of insects any more than your liver is a collection of cells. It is a unified organism, pulsing with its own intelligence, breathing with its own rhythms, thinking with its own distributed mind. Tonight, we descend into the secret world of the ant colony, not to study individual insects, but to witness the birth, growth, and death of an entire civilization. We will follow the insane life cycle of one of nature's most successful experiments in collective intelligence, from the moment a virgin queen tears off her wings to the day her empire crumbles back into the earth. This is the story of the superorganism. Part 2. The founding. Our newly mated queen has been digging for 6 hours straight. Her mandibles, evolved for crushing seeds and cutting through leaf matter, now serve as shovels as she excavates her first chamber. Every few minutes she pauses to consume another mouthful of soil, her body processing the minerals and organic matter that will become the foundation of her underground palace. She is racing against time. Above ground, the sun is setting, and with it, her chances of survival. The statistics are brutal. For every 1,000 queens that take to the sky in their nuptial flight, only one will successfully establish a colony. The others will fall prey to birds, spiders, rival ants, or simply fail to find suitable soil before their energy reserves run out. But our queen has found her spot, a gentle slope with well-drained soil, far enough from existing colonies to avoid immediate warfare, close enough to food sources to sustain her future empire. She digs deeper, her chamber now the size of a marble, perfectly spherical, the walls compressed and smooth, Then comes the moment that will determine the fate of her lineage. She positions herself at the centre of her chamber and begins to lay eggs. Not hundreds. Not yet. Just a few precious oval gems, each one containing the genetic instructions for her future workforce. But here is where the story becomes truly extraordinary. These eggs will not hatch into eating machines. They will emerge as helpless larvae, completely dependent on their mother for food, and she has no food to give them. What she does have is her own body. The queen begins to consume herself. The massive flight muscles that carried her through the sky, muscles that comprise nearly half her body weight, begin to dissolve. Her body breaks down these tissues and converts them into a nutritious secretion that she feeds to her larvae. She is quite literally giving her children the meat from her own bones. For weeks, she exists in this state of controlled starvation. She eats nothing, leaves her chamber for nothing, tends to her young with the dedication of a mother who knows that failure means the extinction of her entire genetic line. Many queens die during this period, their bodies found weeks later, curled protectively around their desiccated offspring. But if she survives, if her gamble pays off, something miraculous happens. The larvae pupate, and from their silken cocoons emerge the first workers, small sterile females with oversized heads and powerful jaws. They are her daughters, but they will never reproduce. They exist for one purpose: to serve the colony. The first workers chew through the chamber walls and break into the outside world. They forage for food, returning with seeds, dead insects, and droplets of sweet plant sap. For the first time in weeks, the queen eats. Her body begins to recover. Her ovaries swell with eggs, and the second phase of the colony's life cycle begins. Part 3. The Rise. 6 months have passed since that first desperate chamber was excavated. The colony now numbers in the hundreds, and their underground city has grown into something that would make human architects weep with envy. The workers have carved out a complex network of chambers, each one designed for a specific purpose. There are nurseries where larvae develop in carefully controlled temperature and humidity. There are granaries where seeds are stored, sorted and processed. There are waste chambers where refuse is deposited, far from the living quarters to prevent contamination. But perhaps most remarkable are the fungus gardens of the leafcutter ants. These colonies have evolved beyond simple scavenging. They have become farmers, cultivating vast underground crops of specialized fungi that exist nowhere else on Earth. Worker ants march in endless columns across the forest floor, each one carrying a piece of fresh leaf many times her own weight. But they do not eat these leaves. Instead, they bring them back to the colony, where they are processed into a nutritious substrate for their fungal farms. This is agriculture in its purest form, more sophisticated than anything humans achieved until the invention of modern farming techniques. The ants maintain optimal growing conditions, weed out competing organisms, and harvest their crop with surgical precision. They have turned their colony into a living greenhouse, capable of supporting millions of individuals in environments where conventional foraging would be impossible. Meanwhile, the queen has transformed into something barely recognizable as the flying insect she once was. Her body has swollen to enormous proportions, her abdomen distended with eggs. She has become a living egg-laying machine, capable of producing thousands of offspring per day. Worker ants tend to her constantly, feeding her, cleaning her, and carrying away the steady stream of eggs that will become the next generation of workers. But this is not a monarchy in any sense we would recognize. The queen controls nothing. She makes no decisions, issues no commands, and has no awareness of the vast empire that surrounds her. She is simply the reproductive organ of the superorganism, as specialized and unconscious as a human heart. The real intelligence of the colony emerges from the interactions of thousands of workers, each one following simple rules, each one responding to chemical signals that create patterns of behavior so complex they appear to be the product of conscious planning. Part 4. The language of chemistry. To understand how this intelligence works, we must learn to see the world as an ant sees it, not through vision, but through chemistry. The colony communicates through an invisible network of pheromones, chemical messages that are laid down, detected, and interpreted by every member of the superorganism. When a worker ant discovers a rich source of food, she does not return to recruit others with dance or sound. Instead, she lays down a chemical trail as she walks back to the colony. This trail says, in the language of molecules, food this way, quality, excellent, distance, moderate, follow me. Other workers detect this trail and follow it. If they agree with the first ant's assessment, they add their own chemical signature to the trail, strengthening the signal. If the food source is particularly rich, more and more workers will follow the trail, each one adding to the chemical highway until it becomes a major thoroughfare of the colony. But pheromones carry more than just directions. They convey information about food quality, danger levels, and even the identity of individual ants. They can signal alarm, recruitment, or territorial boundaries. They can mark areas as safe or dangerous, explored or unexplored. The army ants have turned this chemical communication into a weapon of war. These nomadic colonies, numbering in the millions, move across the landscape like a living tide. They have no permanent home, no fixed territory. Instead, they flow through the forest in massive raids, their front lines stretching for hundreds of meters, their formation coordinated by an intricate network of chemical signals. At the leading edge of the raid, scout ants lay down exploration pheromones. When they encounter prey, a nest of termites, a fallen bird, a trapped insect, they immediately release recruitment pheromones. Within minutes, thousands of workers converge on the target, their attack so coordinated it resembles a military operation. But there are no generals in this army, no commanders issuing orders. The intelligence emerges from the collective behavior of individual ants, each one following simple rules, each one responding to the chemical landscape around her. Part 5. The Mature Empire. 5 years have passed since our queen first tore off her wings. Her colony has grown into a superorganism of staggering complexity. More than 2 million workers patrol her territory, maintain her infrastructure, and defend her borders. The underground city now extends across several acres, with chambers reaching depths of more than 20 feet. The colony has developed its own climate control system. Deep chambers maintain constant temperature and humidity through a network of ventilation shafts that function like the lungs of a massive organism. Hot air rises through central shafts, while cool air is drawn in through peripheral openings. The system is so efficient that the deep chambers maintain a stable temperature within a few degrees, even as the surface temperature fluctuates wildly. The workforce has specialized into distinct castes, each one physically modified for their role. The smallest workers, called miners, tend to the young and maintain the fungus gardens. Their heads are proportionally smaller, their mandibles adapted for delicate work. The major workers, sometimes called soldiers, patrol the territory and defend the colony. Their heads are enormous, their jaws powerful enough to cut through thick vegetation, or crush the exoskeletons of rival insects. In some species, the specialization reaches extraordinary extremes. The honeypot ants have evolved workers whose only function is to serve as living storage containers. These repletes hang from the ceiling of special chambers, their abdomens swollen with honey until they can barely move. They are living pantries, regurgitating food to other workers when resources become scarce. The queen herself has become a colossus. Some species produce queens that can live for 30 years or more, laying eggs continuously throughout their lives. A single queen may produce more than 100 million offspring during her lifetime, each one carrying her genetic signature into the future. But even at the height of her power, the queen remains a prisoner of her own success. She has not seen sunlight in years. She's not moved more than a few inches from her chamber. She's become the beating heart of the superorganism, essential but utterly dependent on the workers who feed her, protect her, and carry out her genetic legacy. Part 6. The Art of War. The mature colony does not exist in isolation. It is surrounded by rivals, other superorganisms with their own territories, their own ambitions, their own genetic imperatives. The boundaries between colonies are zones of constant tension, patrolled by soldiers who are always ready for battle. When war comes, it is total war. There are no prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. The goal is simple: destroy the enemy colony and claim its territory. The battles can last for weeks, involving millions of combatants. The front lines shift back and forth as each side launches attacks and counterattacks. The fighting is fierce, with workers using their mandibles to dismember opponents, their stingers to inject deadly venom, their bodies to form living shields that protect their sisters. But these wars are not chaotic brawls. They are highly organized campaigns, coordinated by chemical signals that allow for complex tactical maneuvers. Workers form phalanxes that advance in formation. Others create supply lines that bring reinforcements from deep within the colony. Still others engage in what can only be described as psychological warfare, releasing alarm pheromones that spread panic through enemy ranks. The Argentine ants have taken warfare to another level entirely. These invasive species have formed what scientists call supercolonies, massive alliances of related colonies that cooperate rather than compete. A single Argentine ant supercolony can span continents, with workers from colonies separated by thousands of miles, recognizing each other as sisters rather than enemies. This cooperation has allowed them to dominate ecosystems around the world. They move like a coordinated army, overwhelming native species through sheer numbers and superior organization. They have turned warfare into a science, and their success has made them one of the most destructive invasive species on the planet. Part 7. The Farmers and the Herders. Not all colonies wage war. Some have discovered that cooperation can be more profitable than conflict. The relationship between ants and aphids represents one of nature's most sophisticated examples of animal domestication. Aphids are small, soft-bodied insects that feed on plant sap. They're also living sugar factories, producing a sweet substance called honeydew that many animals find irresistible. But aphids are also vulnerable, slow-moving, defenseless, and constantly threatened by predators. Ants have solved this problem by becoming shepherds. They protect aphid colonies from predators, moving them to better feeding sites when resources become scarce, and even carrying them into the ant nest during harsh weather. In return, the aphids provide a steady supply of honeydew, essentially allowing the ants to farm sugar without having to search for it. This relationship has become so refined that some species of ants have evolved specialized behaviors for aphid management. They stroke the aphids with their antennae to stimulate honeydew production. They prune the aphid's wings to prevent them from flying away. They even defend aphid eggs during the winter, ensuring that their livestock will be available when the growing season begins. But perhaps the most remarkable example of ant agriculture is found in the fungus gardens of the leaf-cutter ants. These colonies have created a three-way symbiosis between themselves, the fungi they cultivate, and the bacteria that help them maintain their gardens. The fungi exist nowhere else in nature. They have been selectively bred by generations of ants until they produce nutritious structures called gongylidea that serve as the colony's primary food source. The ants, in turn, have evolved specialized behaviors for tending their crops. They prepare the growing medium, plant the fungal spores, weed out competing organisms, and harvest the crop with surgical precision. But the system is even more complex than it appears. The ants also cultivate specialized bacteria that produce antibiotics to protect their fungal gardens from disease. These bacteria live in specialized structures on the ants' bodies, forming a living pharmacy that allows the colony to maintain sterile growing conditions. This is agriculture at a level of sophistication that rivals human farming. The ants have created a sustainable food production system that has supported their colonies for millions of years. They have domesticated their crops, managed their soil, and developed pest control methods that put human agriculture to shame. Part 8. The Queen's Burden. While her millions of daughters wage war, tend gardens, and build cities, the Queen remains trapped in her chamber, her body a factory for the production of new life. She has not moved in years. She has not seen the empire she has created. She exists in a state of constant reproduction, laying eggs by the thousands, her body swollen beyond recognition. Her daughters attend to her every need. They feed her pre-digested food, groom her constantly, and carry away the endless stream of eggs that will become the next generation. They form a living court around her, their entire lives dedicated to keeping her alive and productive. But the Queen is not the ruler of this empire. She is its most valuable prisoner. She has no control over the colony's activities, no awareness of its successes or failures, no ability to make decisions about its future. She is simply the reproductive organ of the superorganism, as specialized and unconscious as any other organ. The real power lies in the collective intelligence of the workers. They decide when to expand the colony, when to go to war, when to seek new territories. They respond to environmental changes, adapt to new challenges, and solve problems that would challenge human engineers. They are the brain of the superorganism, and their queen is merely the womb. This arrangement may seem cruel to human eyes, but it is the result of millions of years of evolution. The queen's sacrifice allows the colony to achieve levels of cooperation and coordination that would be impossible in any other system. Her imprisonment is the price of the superorganism's success. Part 9. The Slow Collapse. 20 years have passed since our queen first took to the sky. Her colony has reached the peak of its power, controlling a territory that spans several square miles, maintaining a population of more than 5 million workers. She has produced nearly 1 billion offspring during her lifetime, each one carrying her genetic legacy into the future. But even superorganisms are not immortal. The queen's body, exhausted by decades of continuous reproduction, is beginning to fail. Her egg production has slowed, her immune system is weakening, and her daughters have begun to sense that the end is near. The decline is gradual at first. Fewer eggs are laid, fewer workers are born, and the colony's population begins to shrink. The workers become more aggressive, more territorial, as they compete for the dwindling resources of a contracting empire. Then comes the moment every colony fears. The queen dies. The effect is immediate and devastating. Within hours, the chemical signals that have held the superorganism together begin to break down. The workers detect the absence of queen pheromones and know instinctively that their world is ending. Some workers attempt to raise new queens from the remaining larvae, feeding them royal jelly and tending them with desperate care. But it is too late. The complex infrastructure of the colony begins to collapse as workers abandon their posts and the carefully maintained systems fall into disrepair. Rival colonies, sensing weakness, launch attacks on the dying empire. The territory that took decades to establish is overrun within weeks. The vast underground city, with its intricate chambers and sophisticated climate control systems, is abandoned and begins to crumble. But the superorganism does not die quietly. In some species, the workers carry out a final act of devotion. They gather the remaining eggs and larvae and attempt to establish satellite colonies, hoping to preserve some fragment of their mother's genetic legacy. Most of these efforts fail, but occasionally a small group of workers succeeds in founding a new colony, carrying the memory of the old empire into the future. Part 10. The Eternal Cycle. Above ground, the seasons turn. Spring arrives, and with it, the tremors of awakening life. Deep beneath the earth, in colonies scattered across the landscape, virgin queens feel the ancient chemical urgency. They push through tons of soil toward a world they have never seen. The cycle begins again. Each nuptial flight represents both an ending and a beginning. The vast majority of queens will fail, their bodies becoming food for the very ecosystem they hope to colonize. But a few, a precious few, will succeed in establishing new empires, new superorganisms, new experiments in collective intelligence. The ant colonies that emerge from these flights will be different from their parents. They will face new challenges, adapt to new environments, and develop new strategies for survival. They will wage wars, form alliances, and create innovations that will astonish researchers for generations to come. But they will all follow the same basic pattern: the desperate gamble of the founding queen, the rise of the superorganism, the peak of empire, and the inevitable collapse. It is a cycle that has repeated itself for more than 100 million years, and it will continue long after our own species has vanished from the Earth.